Blog Talk Radio.
Welcome to the Along Came a Writer Network. Opinions expressed in our shows do not necessarily reflect those of the network. Welcome to the Along Came a Writer Show. I'm your host, Linda Kozar, and today we're going to be talking to the author of If I Were a Tiger. It's a whimsical and playful rhyming picture book about a young boy who imagines himself as a tiger to overcome his fears, only to realize that he can trust in God. Our guest today is Caroline Coleman, and she loves to write for all ages. She has a fiction MFA from Brooklyn College, an English degree from Princeton, and 2 law degrees she says she doesn't use anymore. She's also the author of the novel Loving Soren. She lives in New York City with her family and is no longer afraid of the dark. But I am, so we'll talk about that. I want to read before I call you on, Caroline. I want to read your long bio too because it's so impressive. I just love it. Her first novel, Loving Soren, tells the true story of the woman who loved Soren Kierkegaard, the Danish father of existentialism. Her short fiction has been published by Ms. Magazine Online, and her articles have appeared in Epiphany Magazine, Writer's Digest Magazine, and World Magazine. She has spoken regularly on the radio and in venues ranging from the English Speaking Union, Redeemer Church Writers Group, Pure Women's Conference, and the Glorietta Christian Writers Conference, which I remember so well. She has a fiction MFA from Brooklyn College, English degree from Princeton, law degrees from Oxford and Columbia Law School. She currently teaches English literature as an adjunct to the English department at Hunter College in New York City. She has worked as a litigation associate at Davis Polk in Mordwell, a consultant to the legal department at Morgan Stanley, and clerked for a federal district judge in the Southern District of New York. She served as part-time in-house counsel at Plasma Physics Corp., her father's physics company, and lives in New York City with her fabulous family. Welcome to the show, Caroline.
Thank you, Linda. I don't even know where you got all that, but that's very kind of you to research it. Yeah.
It's so hard, though, when someone reads your bio, because it's like, is that me?
Exactly. I always joke.
Well, you rack up so much stuff, and you forget about a lot of it, But you've done a lot in your life, It's impressive. It's impressive. But
thank you.
What aspect of your life has fulfilled you the most so far?
That's a really good question. You mean other than children and family?
It can be anything,
Yeah, I suppose. I mean, on one level, it's always writing. I guess on a much deeper level, though, the joy, the peace, the sense of everything being okay, even when things are terrible, would be from Jesus.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep, that's true. I mean, it always goes back to our foundation in Christ. So that's awesome. Well, thanks for being here today to talk about your book, If I Were a Tiger. And you wrote this book during the pandemic, which, I mean, bless your heart, you did something awesome during the pandemic. A lot of people were just not doing anything but being miserable. What drove you to the point of writing this book, doing something creative in the midst of so much, I want to call it suffering, because I think it was for a lot of people.
It was, and we were very blessed. We didn't I never got COVID. We didn't lose, anyone to COVID in our family. And we didn't lose our jobs. So I always start with that. So I was in a different position than a lot of people. And I also think too, there were a lot of people who were in that same position, but they had sort of an existential fear going on. They had this sense of, the world is ending, what's going on. And I think that's also where the faith piece comes in, because you sort of have this sense of, okay, today, am I going to try and manage everything on my own, which never works out well, or am I just going to trust God today? And so I kind of leaned into that. In the first week of the pandemic, we got in our car and drove from the city out to Long Island. So that was another blessing too. I didn't have to be in a place where you couldn't really leave your apartment or anything like that.
Yeah.
And so I thought, okay, God brings good out of bad. He never calls bad good, but he brings good out of it. So I just want to have a joy project. So the first week of the pandemic, I just sat in a comfy chair and I'm like, okay, forget about writing the great American novel, which is what I usually, pull my hair out trying to do. And I was like, I'll just do something fun. And so I took out a piece of, I have a pad of like watercolor paper, which I love to write more intentionally on. You can get watercolor paper for like $10 and it's gorgeous. And I took a lovely pen and I just started playing with that line from the Blake poem that I love, Tiger, Tiger, burning bright in the forest of the night. And I just started playing with it. And I wrote, if I were a tiger, I'd stalk through the night and glare at the world with my moon and star sight. And that was where the story came from. It kind of evolved. I went backwards from that. I went forwards from that. But it just came from playing with a line from a poem, which, so easy to do.
The tiger was your muse.
Yeah, and William Blake, there's so many beautiful writers in the world, and it's very easy to think you have to reinvent the wheel. But if you just sort of start with something that someone else has done and play, then you can riff on it.
Definitely. And was it now? You sort of based this on your son too, right? With his childhood fears.
Well, people are always like, so Luke was really afraid, and I'm like, no. It was really more that he wore that tiger costume for Red Bear. He wore that thing day and night. He wore it in the summer. He just loved his little tiger costume. It was really cute. Like my daughter loved all her Disney princess stuff, and she would at age 3, she would totter around on those super dangerous plastic heels. And but Luke was pretty consistent about the tiger costume. So yeah.
Well, there are a lot of
the anxiety. I'll own that. I don't want to put that on my children. But
I know every child has fears. I remember I guess I had seen Wizard of Oz, and then I was scared that a witch lived in my closet. I was just convinced that behind, that panel, there's, a panel where there are pipes behind it or something. I was just convinced that the witch from the Wizard of Oz was living in it.
I actually think that that's a very legitimate fear of yours. I think that the Wizard of Oz, like those monkeys, I think there were so many people terrorized by the flying monkeys.
Scary.
They were really scary.
Well, and I think too, if you're a creative, especially as a child, you're going to be afraid of all different things because, even the normal things are scary to you because you make up things in your mind.
That is true. I mean, Luke was scared. I don't think you would mind me sharing this. He's a writer too now. He's a screenwriter. Oh. And Luke, we lived in our apartment in the city when he was young. It was on the 15th floor. And he was just terrified that aliens with suction cups were going to, I don't know why they couldn't fly, but aliens with suction cups were going to just walk their way up to the 15th floor and come into his room. So children, if the bigger your imagination, the more you can you can have anxiety, whether it's as a child or as a grown-up.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I mean, now I'm scared of something new. Aliens with suction cups. Oh my gosh. But yeah, and children have the biggest imaginations. They are not limited by logic, and they just have the biggest imagination. So, tell us a bit about the book.
Oh, you are so nice to ask. Well, it's about. I started with the line about the tiger and the whole "if I were a tiger" section, which now forms the middle of the book, and that was sort of my favorite part to write, because I was just having fun imagining all the great things you could do if you were a tiger and you weren't afraid of anything, and you could laugh with all your teeth showing. You wouldn't be self-conscious. You could just play. You could do whatever you want. It's sort of this dream life. And so I backed into why the boy Tim is imagining that as I was writing it. And I thought, well, he's afraid of all those things that he could do without any anxiety if he were a tiger. And so, as always in a book, I joke, what I was about to say when you read my bio is that I always joke is that it takes many, many, many degrees to write a book for children, because it's literally, I know, it's 600 words, but I've never rewritten anything more in my life, every single word.
I can imagine. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, because
it used to be.
Keep going.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, you
well,
keep
I was
going.
just going to say, picture books used to be longer if you think of like Eloise, but now the sweet spot is apparently just about 500 words. They really like it to be shorter.
Wow. And and that's sort of distilling so much in such a tiny amount. I mean, that's
and I can't draw. I'm not very good at drawing, and people who are author illustrators they're able to do so much in a picture book, because they can on their own do that beautiful interplay between the images and the words, and they can have the words say one thing and then they have the images say a different thing. They can do anything they want, and so when you can only do the words, I think of it as kind of writing a play. When you write a play, you have no idea what the actors are going to do with it. You don't know what the producer, what the director, and you really just give up control. And that's the fun of it, because then you see what other people can do with their imagination. And the illustrator was amazing, and she made up a whole character, Lammy, who is on every page. She's Tim's little stuffed lamb, and he is literally my favorite part of the book now, and I have nothing to do with him.
Is it, that's an interesting juxtaposition between the lamb and the tiger, apex predator and a lamb. So, I mean, that's kind of cool.
It's really cool. And what she did, too, which is so cute, is that when Tim puts on a tiger costume, Lammy is wearing a tiger costume.
Well, now that's cool, because when we pray, we kind of become that, going from a kitten to the lion, like the Lion of God. When we pray, we're bigger than we are because we're covered by the blood. So that's cool too. I mean, that's just another layer. Yeah. So so your character is Tim Bone, and with a big imagination, as most kids have a big one, and so he's afraid of a lot of things. You said he's afraid of the moon and the wailing typhoon, and he won't wear sneakers because he's afraid of hidden creatures. Now, sometimes that's true, especially in the South, where you might see a roach come out of your shoe or something.
Thank you for that. Thank you.
Yeah. Or a spider, a giant wolf spider. But yeah, those are things that kids can definitely identify with. And so tell us how he comes to his epiphany, his solution.
Well, I actually consulted with a psychiatrist after I wrote it, and I said, I told him the premise of the book, and he said, yeah, absolutely. Kids will definitely pretend if they're afraid of something, they'll try to become the thing that they're afraid of. And you see that phenomenon most clearly with bullies. And of course, we all know that being a bully is not a very fulfilling career choice. And what Tim starts to realize about being a tiger is that people would be afraid of him and that they would run away screaming. So even his parents and his friends, and he couldn't go to school. And he starts thinking about all the things that he actually does have in his life, which I think is part of our epiphany when we come to God, is this sense of there's this ground note of despair in our lives. I mean, that's a little much for a child, but there's a sense that something is wrong and we can't fix it on our own. And when we try, it backfires. And so I think part of the epiphany is the journey that Tim goes on, is where you start to realize, wait a minute, you know what, putting on this costume, and for grown-up, it's sort of, pretending to be something that you're not, which we all do all the time. That's not fulfilling either, because you want to be known. You want to be known as you are. And I think probably my favorite illustration in the book, I can say that because I had nothing to do with it, is when Tim takes off the costume and you just see the costume lying there, and Nadia, who I don't think she's herself Christian. I don't think she is, but she got it. She has Tim kneeling in just a very simple yellow light, and the costume is taken off. The false glittering images that we like to. I'm perfect. Everything's great. I can do this. I can do that. It's not true. We're all a hot mess, and he's just kneeling there, just simply saying, "God help me," and he realizes that God can give him courage, and he'll still be afraid, but he can keep going back to ask for help from God and also from his parents and his friends, and not think he has to bottle it all up in himself.
And to be okay with his genuine self.
And that's where the book lands, is that if he were a tiger, the problem is he couldn't be himself.
Yeah. And if you think about the pandemic too, during that time when a lot of families were home together, and there were great positive things that came out of it, that families spent more time together, but we got to be our genuine selves, not always in a mad dash, a mad race to work and do everything, take the kids to all their games, soccer and whatever, to really be real and be a family, for better or for worse. Sometimes it didn't turn out well, but I think this is a wonderful thing to come out of such a sad time in our lives.
Thank you.
Well, what was the hardest thing for you during that? I mean, how long did it take from the beginning to the end of writing this book, and the whole process, the editing and everything?
I think by the time, let's see, I'm not really sure. It's so hard to know when you're rewriting 600 words. On one level, it seems like it's just a short amount of time, but you have to rethink it. So I have a wonderful agent, Alice Fugate, and the Joy Harris Literary Agency, and she worked on it with me before we submitted it. So that was already a few rounds of edits. And then, it really takes a village. I belong to I had joined it just before the pandemic, an online group called 12 by 12, run by a woman named Julie Hedlund, where it's all about writing picture books. The goal is to write 12 picture books in 12 months. And you can post you can post the whole manuscript online, and you get feedback, and you're supposed to give feedback. And it's really supportive, lovely community, a very professional picture book writers, many of whom are published, have multiple books published. And so I think I posted it there first, So I had multiple rounds of edits from them. Then Alice edited it, and then Alice was able to sell it to Bunmi Ishila at Waterbrook Press, and then Bunmi bought it, and then she and I went back and forth about 3 rounds of edits.
Now for the aspiring children's authors who might be listening today, could anyone join that if they were interested? The 12 by 12.
Yeah, I would totally recommend it. It's they do have a opt-in period, which may or may not be closed. It definitely starts January, February, and I would recommend it to anybody. I would also recommend, if you want to write for children of any age, to join SCBWI, Society of Children's Book Writers and Illustrators. That's about $80 a year, unless it's gone up due to inflation, and that's really the professional organization to join for any kind of children's book writing.
That's been around for a long time, and children's authors love it, and they have a conference every year too, right?
Mm-hmm. They have one in New York and they have one in LA, but they also have regional chapters and a lot of digital content now too, so you don't have to fly to LA anymore.
Okay, that's awesome. Thank you for that tip for some of our listeners who can definitely benefit from that. Now, you wrote a book. Gosh, our time, we only have 10 minutes left. You wrote a book before this that was, is it a love story with Soren Kierkegaard, or is it is it the story more of the woman who loved him?
So it's that one took me 7 years to write from the moment I got the idea to when it got published, and it's about the woman who loved Soren Kierkegaard. So it's a historical novel. It's true,
like historical fiction with elements of romance, maybe.
Yeah, because she was engaged to Kierkegaard when she was young, and he dedicated most of his books to her. When he died, he left her stuff in his will, and I mean, I don't want to give away the plot too much, but he was very much obsessed with her. He has a book called Diary of a Seducer, which is sort of, I hope it's him riffing on his sort of obsession with her, because she was quite young when he first met her. I think he was about 10 years older, and she was about 14, and he used to follow her from her piano lessons. And I mean, I do think, as a novelist who believes very strongly that fiction is fiction and that you're not being autobiographical, that he took the idea of an older man being obsessed with a younger woman, and then sort of kind of playing with that, because he was also a Christian, so he was sort of.
Well, people have to understand the historical context too of relationships back then. People did marry earlier, and an age gap wasn't really considered that big a deal. I mean, a girl could marry at 14, and people didn't live as long either. So
he didn't, but he wasn't very healthy.
Context.
Yeah,
I mean, because these days people would, frown on that. And it's just different back then.
It is. I think Diary of a Seducer is more about being creepy, though. I mean, that's why it's called Diary of a Seducer. He really was kind of focusing on that aspect of it, not really the age gap. So that's why I say I take it as more fictional than autobiographical. But who knows?
Now, when you started writing, it's so funny. That's your first book, and do you double think yourself a lot? Because I know, gosh, most writers who write their first book have to deal with just overthinking, or just omitting whole chapters, just not really being sure where to go with certain things. Did any of that happen when you were writing it? Because you said it took 7 years, and that's about right.
Yeah, some people, I think, are very good at plots, and they can kind of sit down quietly and think and then write. I'm not that person. I figure out what it's about by writing. And so I wrote the whole thing and had an agent who tried to sell it. And after a year, it was actually pretty funny. She got this huge buzz going, and I even sat next to somebody on the New York City subway who was like reading it. And then for 2 weeks, everyone was super excited about it. And then they all got unexcited because they actually read it, and it was terrible. And so after a year, I said, thank you so much. And I took it back from her, and I didn't do anything with it for 2 years. And I went on the spiritual journey that was kind of the missing piece of the novel, which I didn't know until I had kind of gone down that road. And someone once asked me, where did you go? Like, imagining I'd gone to India. And I'm like, I went on my knees. And so I rewrote it. I sold it to a wonderful editor named Gary Karashida at the Glorieta Christian Writer Conference. And he bought it based on the first 2 chapters, which is actually super unusual for fiction. Usually you have to write the whole thing. And I rewrote those chapters specifically for him. I've actually been thinking a lot recently about audience and how audience changes the way you write. And because I knew he was a believing Christian, and he was at a Christian publisher, Broadman and Holman, I stopped trying to kind of like weave the Christianity into the novel as symbolism. And I was really out there with Regina's faith, with her doubt and her prayers and her journey. And I think it made it I'm not saying it's a good novel, but it made it a much better novel.
You know, isn't the real writing begins, I think, in the rewrites. You know, when you write something and then you put it aside and then you go back to it, well, what happens to me is I'll say, oh my gosh, what was I thinking? or I'm more willing to cut things or rewrite them totally.
Oh,
I see
absolutely.
a different place. Because I'm more of a pantser too, you know, right by the seat of my pants. I plot probably maybe halfway through the book, but I pants it in the beginning. And that's kind of fun. It's just, you know, you fall into one of those 2 categories, and it sounds like you're a pantser too.
Oh, absolutely. I love Stephen King saying that he'll write his character into the deepest, darkest corner he can possibly imagine, because then he has the fun of trying to extricate him and write him out of that problem situation.
Yeah, and it's fun for you too, because you're not going to get bored knowing where you're going. You let your characters take you on that journey, which is far more fun.
And I do think it's true that if you're bored as a writer, your reader is going to be like, you know.
Oh, yeah.
They're going to be bored
and
out of
predictable.
their brain. Yeah.
Like, you don't want to be boring or predictable. So yeah, I get that. Well, you know, where did 30 minutes go? They're gone. But I wanted to tell people where to find you. Caroline Coleman, you can find her at caroline.coleman, COLEMAN .969 on Instagram or on Facebook. In fact, we just became friends on Instagram, I saw. And you can find her at Caroline Coleman Writer on Facebook. And are you on Twitter? Are you on Pinterest or any of those things?
And I have a Twitter account. I think I have like 3 followers, and I don't really tweet.
Yeah, but they can find you on Soch. All they have to do is look for you. They have your name. And If I Were a Tiger, go out and buy this book for your children. They will love it. Thank you so much for being on the show today, Caroline. I look forward to your next book. You can come back on the show.
Thanks. And I look forward to reading your books. They look awesome.
Oh, thank you so much. And let's talk on Instagram.
That sounds lovely. Thank you.
Thank you. Have a great rest of your day.
Okay, you too. Bye-bye.
Thanks for listening in. I'm a long-time writer.